A huge update on Ronda Rousey's upcoming WWE return. Sasha Banks is back in WWE and competing tonight at the Royal Rumble. A big star from Monday Night Raw is traded to Friday Night SmackDown. Brock Lesnar body slams Wee Man from Jackass through a table. All this and more in today's WWE News. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is plenty of news stories to get into today. So let's get off into the big story because there is plenty to talk about. Of course, it's Royal Rumble Saturday and there's plenty of surprises afoot in store for everyone tuning in tonight as we are now on the road to WrestleMania. Let's start off talking about Ronda Rousey. There's so much discussion and rumors about her return or her upcoming return to WWE. Now, Ronda Rousey is reportedly returning to WWE imminently. As we've spoken about here on the channel, Rousey is rumoured to make her return to WWE this weekend, perhaps at tonight's Royal Rumble or on Monday's edition of Raw. It's been reported that at least one WWE official flew to California to meet with the former UFC champion last week, and her stylist has been booked to be at the Rumble and Raw for weeks now. But in an update, it was noted on the latest episode of Wrestling Observer Radio that Rousey will be returning as soon as tonight's Royal Rumble event in St. Louis, but it's not known if she's going to be actually in the 30-woman Royal Rumble match or if she's going to be featured in an angle after the match. Kind of similar to how she made her WWE debut back in 2018. Of course, at the time, everyone knew that Ronda Rousey had signed with WWE. Everyone knew that she was going to be wrestling for the company. There was loads of rumors and discussion about her coming out, and a lot of people assumed with that being the first ever women's Royal Rumble match and it main eventing the show that Rousey would be maybe number 30 and win the match and then have a match at WrestleMania. That, of course, didn't happen. You had the Women's Royal Rumble match. It was won by Asuka. And then after the match, you had Asuka in the ring with Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss at the time. And then out came Ronda Rousey to the big ovation. I think, personally, that she will actually be in the Rumble match because I don't see the rationale for them doing pretty much the same angle that they did in 2018, in my opinion. But we'll see when it comes to that. Now, it was reported earlier this week that WWE officials had discussed Rousey versus Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch as a possible WrestleMania 38 match. Now, that looks to be the plan, but Rousey is headed to the Blue brand. It was noted that the current plan is for Rousey to be back as a regular on SmackDown, but she will not be wrestling SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 38, as the word is going around that it's Rousey versus Lynch. While plans have for Rousey to be a regular on the Blue brand, she's still expected to work some Raw shows, including Monday's post-Rumble episode. Now, regarding Rousey's WWE contract status, this new report says she is expected to be with the company for at least 1 year. Contract specifics have not been revealed as of the recording right now, but it was noted that this new deal isn't just for the Rumble and a WrestleMania 38 storyline, and then she's gone again. While it remains to be seen if she's going to be used every single week as she was previously, it was confirmed that the deal is for more than just the Rumble and WrestleMania. Now, as we spoke about previously, Rousey is currently under contract to WWE. Her original deal was reportedly expiring and expired last year in April, but either a new deal was put together or WWE froze her original 3-year contract because she only really worked the first year and a bit of it. Now, obviously, she's been away since having a child and she's been talking about returning to training, etc. But the big news coming out of it is that yes, Rousey is scheduled to return imminently. She's probably going to be at the Rumble. She's going to be working SmackDown going forward, not Monday Night Raw, but she's not going to be facing Charlotte Flair. But she's going to be working SmackDown and not Monday Night Raw. That's the plan going forward here. But it's rumored that she's going to be facing Becky Lynch, which again, to me, just the only way I can see them doing that then is that she wins the Rumble, right? That to me is the only viable outcome of that, right? She wins, she returns tonight at the Rumble, say she's entrant number 30 or 29 or something of that nature, wins it, says I'm going to be facing Becky Lynch at WrestleMania for the Raw Women's Championship, but she does the majority of her build on SmackDown. To me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So who else on SmackDown could she realistically face off against if she isn't going to face off against Charlotte Flair? Maybe Sasha Banks, I guess. Sasha Banks, we'll talk about her return in a second, so maybe it could be that, but then I got the impression, considering the segment last night that had her return, that it's going to be Sasha Banks versus Charlotte Flair. at WrestleMania for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So to me, the only viable outcome is that it's Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch. And the reason she's just going to be doing the majority of SmackDown shows is because they're on Fox and they have more viewers than Raw, I guess. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to have the Raw Women's Championship match be hyped up on SmackDown. I don't know. There's kind of points of this that still don't really make a ton of sense. The one thing we do know, Ronda Rousey is set to return to WWE. She's going to be back probably tonight or Monday for Raw, and she's going to be probably facing Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, and she's going to be around for a year. It's not a case of just the Rumble, then a couple of shows, WrestleMania, then she's out. She's going to be around for a year. Now, I personally don't think it means she's going to be on television every single week like she was previously. If she is, it will be a case of, like before, she just used televisions and maybe the occasional live event, but probably just TVs. I don't know if she'll do all of them, but basically, WWE wants Ronda Rousey obviously for the Rumble. They might want her to go to Saudi Arabia. Whether or not she does, I don't know. That'll be up to her. But WrestleMania, they'll want her obviously for SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Money in the Bank's a stadium show this year, so she'll be involved in that too. So that's why they want her, because they've got several stadium shows this year. More stadium shows than they ever have previously, I think, in a year is going to happen this year, essentially. You've got the Rumble, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, another Saudi show. You've got SummerSlam. You've got Money in the Bank. There was that rumored UK stadium show. You're looking at like 7 stadium shows this year. It's insane. So they need star power, WWE, and, you know, put your opinions on Ronda Rousey aside. She's a draw. I think she comes into the company, again, she's still the biggest female star that they'll have just by, face recognition. So it's a big deal. I think she's going to be facing Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. I just don't know how much it makes sense that she'd be on SmackDown. For me, that could be wrong. If she's going to be facing Becky Lynch, she has to be on Raw. But I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to do something. The brand split means nothing, and we'll get to that. Speaking of SmackDown, last night we saw Sasha Banks return to WWE ahead of schedule, it must be said, with her injury. Sasha Banks made a return to WWE television on Friday's episode of SmackDown. They had a segment that opened the show of Charlotte Flair coming out and talking about the Rumble, which of course she's in. The storyline with Charlotte Flair is that she's going to win it and then pick her opponent for WrestleMania. We then saw the likes of who came out, Aaliyah and Shotzi Blackheart, or Shotzi and Natalya, etc. This then led Sasha Banks coming out to a big reception. There was a brawl, and eventually Sasha Banks attacked Charlotte Flair and threw her over the top rope and declared herself ready to rumble. So the suggestion was, certainly, prior to Sasha Banks' injury, that she was going to be facing Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. I would assume that's still the plan. I don't think Sasha Banks is going to win the Rumble. I think they're probably going to do a Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar spot where Sasha Banks eliminates Charlotte Flair from the Rumble, and then Charlotte Flair maybe comes back in and eliminates Sasha Banks. That sets up their match at WrestleMania. I think that's where they'll be going with that one. To be honest with you, I thought the opening segment on SmackDown was horrible. It was so bad. I mean, the only redeeming thing was that Sasha Banks came out, because the promos, Charlotte Flair's promo was fine, I guess, but the promos by the rest, the promos by Aaliyah, and I get the whole, 317 thing's funny, but the promo was awful. The Shotzi promo was awful. Natalya, we know her acting capabilities. It was a tough watch, and I was watching it at the time thinking, this is your opening segment for your go-home show? You kidding me? And then Banks comes out, and I'm like, okay, there's something that you can kind of work with. And I've seen a lot of people say, why did they not save that for the Rumble? Should it have been a surprise return? But, it's fair. I think it's a fair criticism. But I think also you have to look at things in context. Obviously, one would come to the conclusion that WWE has something big planned for the Rumble, a big surprise specific for that Women's Rumble, i.e. Ronda Rousey. So you wouldn't want to overshadow that. And also, you want to pop a big moment when it comes to SmackDown. You want to build momentum, right? And I think they did that. I think, people are talking about Sasha Banks today, and they might not have been talking about her as much if she returned at the Rumble tonight, and then Ronda Rousey returns a couple minutes later. They'd be talking about Ronda, not so much about Sasha. At least today they're talking about Sasha, and tonight they'll be talking about Ronda, etc. And I know I've seen some people, I think John Alba said, well, AEW's proved that you can do 2 returns in one night. That's fair, but I just think... I think it actually made sense, to be honest. And look, this is someone that criticizes WWE a lot when it comes to booking and lack of logic, but I do think it was logical for her to return. So on SmackDown as opposed to at the Rumble, especially if the feud is Charlotte Flair. And that's what they're going with in that direction. So Great to see Sasha Banks back. She wasn't initially set to be back for the Royal Rumble because of her foot injury, but she's recovered ahead of schedule, and it looks like she's going to be facing off against Charlotte Flair. Speaking of SmackDown as well last night, this was just odd. We've seen a big trade, and that big trade is that Big E, former WWE champion Big E, former WWE champion just a couple of weeks ago, Big E has been traded to SmackDown from Monday Night Raw. Yes, Big E is officially back on SmackDown full-time. WWE announced on Friday's Go Home episode before the Royal Rumble that the New Day member has been traded from Raw. For anyone wondering, this is a complete turnaround that, of course, just makes the brand extension and brand separation an even bigger joke than it was previously. Big E was Monday Night Raw's top pick in the draft in October. He was the number one pick for Monday Night Raw because he was the WWE champion. But WWE's decided to change course once again. So they had a match announced for the show that was just kind of odd anyway. It was Big E and Kofi Kingston versus Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss. And everyone went, okay, that's a bit odd. And then before the match, they just announced that the former WWE champion is back on Fox permanently. So it just seems very strange, very odd. And I mean, a lot of people can read a lot of ways into it. Is this the end of Big E's run as a main eventer? Did he not win over the people he was meant to? Have they changed plans? The original plan, prior to what happened at day one, the original plan was for Seth Rollins to win the WWE Championship in that match. And then the rumor was, if you believe it, that was going to be Seth Rollins versus Big E, WWE Championship at WrestleMania 38 on one of the nights. What a distance we've come now. What a huge distance we've come now. Now, the only thing I suppose that some people might say is, well, you know, maybe we actually see Seth Rollins defeat Roman Reigns tonight at the Rumble, win the Universal Championship, and then one of the matches at WrestleMania is actually Seth Rollins, Big E for the Universal Championship. I'm actually a bit shocked by the amount of people saying that they think Seth Rollins is going to beat Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble tonight. I would be flabbergasted, absolutely flabbergasted. The longest reigning Universal Champion in history, his Universal title reign gets ended at the Rumble when you're this close to WrestleMania. You've gone all that time. You might as well continue. I don't even see Reigns losing at WrestleMania. I see Reigns holding the Universal Championship until next year's WrestleMania when he faces The Rock, and I see him beating him again. You've got this opportunity to do something really special, and I just don't think they'd throw it away for the sake of to swerve the fans and be like, oh, we're going to actually do Brock versus Roman Reigns for the WWE title at WrestleMania, and then Roman wins and he's the WWE champion. What does that achieve, like, in terms of history? It makes more sense to me if you want to do something historic and you want to do something that's memorable, it'd be Roman Reigns holding the championship for as long as possible. So I don't see that logic. What I see, and I think makes more sense, is that Big E just plans change, pal, and now WWE have just decided, look, when it comes to Universal Championship, we're still doing Reigns versus Brock. Brock's going to drop the championship to Bobby at the Rumble tonight, and then maybe we're going to do Bobby versus, I don't know, Seth, or we're going to do Bobby versus Kevin Owens. We're going to do something different on Monday Night Raw, as opposed to what we were going to do. That's the direction I think they're going in. Might be wrong, obviously, but I think that's the direction that they're going in. So I did find it odd. I find it very odd. The only thing I would say is possibly a positive for Big E and SmackDown is that they need top baby faces because they need more people to face Roman. So I wouldn't be surprised if coming out of WrestleMania we see Roman Reigns versus Big E Universal Championship. The problem is Big E isn't winning. I suppose they could do that maybe at SummerSlam, and that's when you have Roman drop the championship, maybe to Big E then. But to me, like I said, I think they're saving Roman to be the Universal Champion at WrestleMania next year and face The Rock and beat The Rock in The Rock's final match inside of a WWE ring. I really think that's the aim, or at least that's the plan as of right now, and that plan could change a lot between now and then. But it was just an odd one that I just really didn't understand. I guess we'll let it play out, right? Let it play out, pal. I love this story. This is so much fun. So there is a video going round of WWE Champion Brock Lesnar body slamming Jackass-style Wee Man through a table. Now, according to TMZ Sports, the video was shot at a restaurant in St. Louis, where, of course, the Royal Rumble is tonight. As can be seen in the video everywhere, you'll be able to just find it on social media. Johnny Knoxville and his other Jackass co-stars watched on and cheered for Lesnar. Of course, Knoxville will be an entrant in the 30-man Royal Rumble match. It's great. I mean, The one thing I will say, it's hilarious, and I've watched it probably a million times. As you can see there, he's got Wee Man up, and he's sort of saying to him, you sure, you sure? And this ain't like a WWE gimmick table, by the way. This is a table in a restaurant, and he puts him through it. Nobody doubt the strength of Brock Lesnar, ever, as if you ever did anyway, but he put Wee Man through a legitimate table in a restaurant. Now, I feel a bit bad for the restaurant. I was thinking, man, talk about damage, because he's broke table, you can hear glasses shattering and all that kind of stuff. It's hilarious, and make no mistake, I'm sure Brock or Johnny or just Jackass in general, they can all afford to pay for it, and I'm sure they will. And in fairness, probably just the publicity that this restaurant's got out of this is probably worth it. It's a great video. I recommend watching it. It's hilarious. And again, I've probably watched it a million times. This is a story I also wanted to talk about. I wasn't able to do a video yesterday. It was just a crazy day, but I really wanted to talk about this story when it comes to WWE reportedly offering Jeff Hardy not only a return, but a 2022 Hall of Fame induction, only for Jeff Hardy to turn it down. Now, there is so much to this story. So, of course, WWE released Jeff Hardy in early December after he reportedly turned down an offer of rehab from the company. This came after the six-man tag team match where he was sluggish. People thought he was intoxicated. He tagged out, disappeared through the crowd, all that kind of stuff. Pulled from the road after that incident, was offered rehab, turned it down. Subsequently, Matt Hardy had come out saying that he felt that Jeff Hardy didn't need rehab. He was actually healthiest and fittest he'd ever been. He was in a good place in his life. Well, in an update, the Wrestling Observer yesterday reported that WWE Talent Relations head John Laurinaitis actually called Jeff Hardy a few weeks ago to talk about the possibility of bringing Jeff Hardy back to the company, and also, on top of that, offered to put him in the 2022 Hall of Fame class, which is kind of crazy to me, because why would you put a guy that you think needs to go into rehab into the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, Jeff Hardy, he was released in December. So you're saying, this is what's crazy, in December, you're saying to a guy, you've got a substance problem that you still haven't addressed, you need to go to rehab. And just a couple of weeks later, you're going, how about going in the Hall of Fame? Like, what? And that would imply to me that WWE is going, we might have made a mistake here. We may have slipped up, and maybe something's we've made an error, essentially. Now, of course, Jeff Hardy reportedly turned down the offer of not only a return but a Hall of Fame spot, and actually asked for his drug test results from when he was released in December, because he knew he wasn't going to test positive for any recreational drugs. It took Hardy and his wife Beth 6 weeks to get the results back. There is a feeling that Hardy is one guy that WWE does not want in AEW, because they've realized the Hardy Boys will be a revitalized tag team with so many teams in AEW to work with. Of course, the list of teams in AEW is endless. Whether it's the Young Bucks, Red Dragon, FTR, Lucha Bros, Jurassic Express, I could go on and on. Now, Jeff and Matt have already started accepting Indian signing dates together for later on in the year. Now, Hardy is under contract to WWE through Wednesday, March 9th, when his non-compete clause expires. So, of course, AEW can't make a legal offer until then. I'm sure they're probably talking informally. But the belief is that he does that unless he goes back to WWE, he's going to AEW. I think at this point he will go to AEW. Previously, I didn't, because the narrative was that, of course, Jeff Hardy was having these issues again, and I thought, well, AEW won't touch him if that's the case. Now, as more time goes on, it kind of appears that that's not the case, that Hardy wasn't abusing substances. Now, I think it's curious as to the language used in this when he says that he wasn't going to test positive for any recreational drugs. Of course, previously, I think Jeff's been open that he's had issues with recreational drugs, but he's also had issues with prescription drugs as well, and alcohol. And I'm sure maybe if he got those test results back, who knows what was in it? You know, there could have been prescription drugs in there. There could have been, you wouldn't even have alcohol flag up, I don't think, right? I'm not an expert. So there's different ways of looking at it. There's also a trailer thought that Hardy might have had a concussion, or he might have had an injury, and he just, like I said, maybe had a concussion and he got knocked loopy and he just took himself out of the match. Nobody really knows the story, and I think it's fascinating, and I think we have to just wait until we see and hear Jeff Hardy's side of it. We still haven't heard Jeff Hardy's side of the argument. But the fact that WWE already is offering a return for Jeff Hardy, and on top of that, they want to put him in the Hall of Fame, that implies that they got those drug test results back and they went, oh, he's clean. Like, damn, we might have made a massive mistake. And we don't, like I said, they don't want to strengthen the rivals. So I think it's WWE panicking, but when it comes to Jeff Hardy, why would he go back? Why on earth would he go back to that? They've essentially slandered his name. They released him and said they really needed to get help when he didn't. So why would he go back, and why would he go in the Hall of Fame? Like I said, you don't put someone in the Hall of Fame if a month prior you say they've got to go to rehab. That just doesn't work like that. It doesn't. People like Jake Roberts and Scott Hall took years and had to provide, prove to the WWE that they'd been sober and clean and straight for 18 months, 2 years before they were even allowed to go in. Not a month. So I think that's a really interesting story. I really, really do. Sonya Deville made her return to the ring on SmackDown last night. She lost to Naomi, but she also, after the match, announced that she is official for the Royal Rumble. So she's going to be in the Women's Royal Rumble. The match itself was okay. I think at points you could tell that Sonya Deville was a bit gassed at points, and she looked a bit... and there was a spot where it looked like she might have hurt her shoulder or had a concussion, but she was fine in the end. I just don't get it. I'm a big Sonya Deville fan. It was unfortunate, obviously, what happened to her, especially when it happened to her, because she was one of the hottest females going on SmackDown at the time, and it really sucked. They were going to do the hair versus hair match with Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville at the time, so that really was unfortunate. And she's done a good job, I think, in the authority figure. But this storyline just makes no sense. I think it's been going on for 5 months. We still don't know why Sonya Deville doesn't like Naomi. This was meant to be a blow-off to a storyline that makes really no sense. The referee, they did a thing of you got to call it down the middle, and he did. And then afterwards, it was Sonya Deville going, but I'm going to be in the Rumble. And it was, I don't know. It makes no sense. And it feels like it's not doing a service to anyone. The crowd in parts of it got into it at the end, but they were quiet for a lot of it because, again, there's not a lot of sense in it. And I like both competitors, but the sooner they just move on from this, the better. I really don't get it. Vince McMahon, we know Vince McMahon's more heavily involved in NXT nowadays. Well, WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon reportedly wants Joe Gacy pushed on the NXT 2.0 brand. Now, Gacy is currently the mouthpiece for Haaland in NXT 2.0, but he actually made mainstream headlines, of course, several months ago when WWE introduced his new woke character. The character's been toned down a bit in recent months, but some of the politically correct verbiage is still used. Now, in an update, the Wrestling Observer newsletter is reporting that Vince wanted Gacy pushed because he believes the character will bring WWE mainstream publicity as it did a few months back. So that's Vince basically, and this is typically out the Vince McMahon playbook. Vince McMahon, when he does a character that's controversial, he loves it. He absolutely loves it. I mean, do we have to name them? I think back to just a few, well, I say a few years ago, 10 years ago now. God, time moves so quickly. But even when they had the Jack Swagger, Zeb Coulter thing, that was touching a big nerve at the time, right? About immigration and all that kind of stuff. And everyone was like, and that got headlines of people going, this might be in bad taste. But at one point, that was meant to be a big featured WrestleMania match. Now, in the end, it kind of changed because of Jack Swagger's DUI arrest and all that kind of stuff. But he loves it. Do I need to even say Muhammad Hassan? Do I need to even say any of these characters in the past? Sergeant Slaughter. Vince McMahon loves controversy because he knows it gets mainstream headline. He doesn't necessarily care if it's good or bad press either. And I know that probably, WWE's investors, because they're a publicly traded company, and I know some of their sponsors were probably concerned when Fox News was going, isn't this character great because he's mocking the woke and all this kind of stuff, and some of the people went, whoa, let's not get into that side, let's just not get political here. And I certainly do not lean on the side of Fox or anything like that, but Vince McMahon probably saw it and went, yeah, let's just save it for now. Why waste it? He's probably thinking. We can do that on the main roster. And I think that's the plan for Joe Gacy. Speaking of NXT talents that are going to be called up to the main roster, LA Knight is reportedly getting called up very soon because WWE officials are said to be, quote, very high right now on LA Knight. Now, Knight is currently working on the NXT 2.0 brand, but the Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that as a few weeks ago, Knight was scheduled to be called up to the main roster in the spring after WrestleMania 38. Now, of course, he's recently been doing dark matches on Raw and SmackDown. I think he may have done a couple of main event episodes. So that's the plan, I think, for LA Knight going forward. He was involved in that post-Raw segment with Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode that was on social media. It may be pushed up from the spring due to that backstage angle taped at Raw, so we could maybe see him before WrestleMania. Knight's one of those guys as well, and Eli Drake, right, if you're a fan of him from Impact Wrestling, the NWA, etc. I've been a big fan of Eli Drake and LA Knight for a long time. I found it baffling, to be honest, why he didn't get to WWE sooner. Of course, he was in developmental previously in WWE a long time ago. I found it baffling that he didn't get into WWE sooner because he's everything Vince McMahon loves. He's got a great look, got a great physique, and he can talk. I mean, his matches are fine. They're okay. They are what they are, but he can talk. His greatest asset is his ability to talk. He's got a million catchphrases as well, whether it's LA Knight or yeah or anything like that, or that's a fact of like, he's got a million of them, which is a WWE dream. So I find it kind of crazy that it's taken this long, but you know, I have no doubt he saw LA Knight and went, yeah, absolutely get him up on the main roster. Plus, he doesn't, and again, with a lot of these people in NXT now, he doesn't fit. He's 40. And that isn't the age bracket for NXT anymore when it comes to their roster. WWE wants people in their 20s or early 30s in NXT 2.0 that have a background in sports or a background in entertainment, not in pro wrestling. And LA Knight doesn't fit that. But what he does fit is the main roster right now. So that's why LA Knight is going to be called up very, very soon. But anyway, guys, as always, let me know your thoughts of today's WWE news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner as well. Of course, we'll be live tonight for the Royal Rumble watch-along and the Royal Rumble post-show. So be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Click the notification bell, and you'll be notified when we go live this evening. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.